morning. My name is Just Kumar. We have a fantastic show for you today. Right now, as you can see, I'm actually behind the helm of the boat, the Taney. Okay, actually the ship, the Coast Guard ship, the Taney, built in the 1930s. We have a great show for you lined up. We're going to take a walk around. We're going to talk to some of the people that actually used to live on this boat. So we're going to have a great time. Why don't you stick around, okay? We'll be right back. With you as promised, we have Patrick Acquia. Did I say that correctly?
Correct, you did.
All right, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I tell you what, I'm just fascinated looking around here. This is an incredible boat we have here. This is the Taney. What's the full?
The Roger B. Taney.
The Roger B. Taney.
Would be WHEC Coast Guard High Endurance Cutter number 37, the Roger B. Taney.
Wow. Wow. Tell us a little bit about the boat. I mean, this was built, you said, in 1943?
No, 1935.
1935?
1935. The ship was built in 1935. It was decommissioned December 7th, 1986. Mm-hmm. It actually has almost 50 years of active Coast Guard service. This has always been a Coast Guard ship. Mm-hmm. It has a long history. It's been to, it was the command ship at Okinawa for the Amphibious Landings. Mm-hmm. It served in Vietnam. This ship also performed the last ocean weather station patrol.
Oh, wow.
This one did the last one. It was before satellite radar for weather.
Okay.
Different Coast Guard ships would patrol different areas of the oceans around the world and send weather reports back. When we refer to this ship as the Taney, not the Roger B, but mostly the Taney. Mm-hmm. We also refer to the ship. This ship is 327 feet long and 41 feet wide.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
She draws about 13 feet of water. Mm-hmm. We actually, Coast Guardsmen, we refer to our ships by the feet. So if I was to tell somebody what ship I was on, I would say I was on a 327 foot long ship, mm-hmm. or 327. They would know that I was on a Secretariat class Coast Guard cutter.
Now you were saying this boat was in commission from 1935 when it was built all the way into the 80s.
Well, actually it was commissioned in 1936.
1936?
And it was in service until December 7th of 1986.
That's amazing. It's a 50-year history.
Correct.
Was that normal? Was that normal for boats?
For the Coast Guard, it is normal because we, at the time the ship was in service, mostly it was Department of Treasury and then it was over to the Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. The Coast Guard being the 5th military service, but not under the Department of Defense control, the funding is a little bit more different. Mm-hmm. We fall under roads and taxes, so we're kind of like the last service to get anything.
The thing that really strikes me is that the technology from 1936 was able to last that long. When I'm looking around the boat and I see like the engines in the back and all that stuff, was that built back in 1936?
Yes, a lot of it have been. A lot of the engine parts have been redone.
Mm-hmm.
Our boilers have been relined because we are a steam engine.
Yep.
We have two, and they actually have names. The crew members on here named Huff and Puff. which
Good name for a steam engine.
Yeah, that
sounds like it would be. Yeah,
the name of our boilers. Those are originally been rebricked and everything like that. Some things on the ship had been updated in the engine compartment as new technology would come on, but basically it's a basic 1936 steam plant.
Wow. So is the engine very similar to that of like a steam locomotive train back in the 30s?
Yeah, except it would be a little bit more detailed because of size. Our size compared to just our boilers alone would probably be 3 locomotives, just our one boiler in space.
Wow.
To make our horsepower.
And then to go ahead and to fuel it, were they using coal like they did on the trains?
We used number 4 black oil, which is an unusual oil in that it basically, the only way I can really tell you how it looks like is it looks like roofing tar or maybe real thick, heavy chocolate pudding.
Wow.
And we would actually have to heat the oil up before we could get it to flow through the pipes in order to fire it off to light the boilers. And from the boilers, we made all of our power, all of our cooking was done, all of our water was made, all of our excess power. Everything we used was made from the boilers.
So the boilers, and not only did they move the boat, they also fed everybody and took care of all that stuff too.
They ran our little city here.
That's amazing. Little city.
Little city.
So how many people were on this boat at one time?
Well, during World War II, it was about 260. When I was on here in the early 80s, it was just about 130. In the early history of the ship, World War II, most of the crew members that were on here were for the gun crews. Because we had much more, we had 3 more cannons beside the one we have on the bow now. Anti-aircraft guns, so most of that was the extra people that we needed for the gun crew. After that, because almost all Coast Guard weapons were for self-defense, we went down to 1 cannon, and naturally the number of crew members needed to run the ship also shrunk. Now, new Coast Guard ships that are at this class configuration actually have even less people because they're diesel and they don't have a boiler room. We had to have basically 2 engine groups on here. You had the boiler men and you had the engine men. So on the newer ships that are diesel, there are no boiler men needed. So that would take another 10 or 12 people out of the crew.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You know, I heard that this ship was actually in Pearl Harbor. Is that correct?
Well, it was a little bit off from Pearl Harbor. It was at the power plant because there were so many ships at Pearl Harbor. There just wasn't any room for the Coast Guard ships. So we were actually, this ship was actually docked over at the power plant with another Coast Guard cutter.
Wow, and this is during the attacks of Pearl Harbor, 1941.
This ship actually opened up fire on the Japanese, and it is credited with this and the other Coast Guard ship were credited with saving the power plant, which was sorely needed at the time.
Wow.
One of the things that we feel that the reason the Taney saved the power plant was because all Coast Guard ships are painted white. And the Japanese did all of their information on Navy ships, which are painted gray. And when they went to the power plant, the white ships started opening up, and they had no idea why these ships were shooting at them. So it threw them for a minute.
Wow.
That's one of the theories that we have as Coast Guardsmen. That was why the ship. But she fought her way out. She stayed in Hawaii for about another 2 years till the fleet rebuilt, and then she went to the Atlantic, where she did 3 convoy duties to the Atlantic. After that, she went back to the West Coast. This ship was really called the Queen of the Pacific. She spent most of her time in the Pacific and then back to the East Coast. She's one of the few Coast Guard ships that it seemed like, I guess, every decade she was moved to another coast. She went back and forth. So this is really a ship that has served around the world. Wow. So besides Pearl Harbor, has it seen any other battle or hostile type of conditions? Well, this ship was reconfigured, and it was the command ship at Okinawa for the Amphibious Landings. The ship went through the Amphibious Landings, you're talking about the airplanes with big pontoons on the bottom? No, we're talking about the Marines in the landing craft and going to the beach. That is the Amphibious Landing. And most of your war movies where you see them in the little boat and they're heading to the beach to drop the thing, and they run ashore, this was the command ship. A Coast Guard ship was in command with a rear admiral from the Navy, was the command ship for all of that. This ship The orders were given about which boat goes next to the beach from here. When the ship was at Okinawa, in 30 days it was attacked about 120 times.
120 times?
Correct.
Wow. Wow. And it stood strong. Did anything ever happen with the boat where it was an emergency condition?
Well,
any kind of history like that?
I'm going to tell you, the ship was at Pearl Harbor. It was at Okinawa. It was in Vietnam. 50 years of service. No American has ever died on this ship.
Wow.
In all of the battles it's been in, no American has ever died, and we're kind of proud of that fact.
That is pretty wild.
It kind of lives up to our Coast Guard heritage of saving.
Yeah. It must have taken on some pretty serious hits though during those war times, right?
Yes.
It's probably been shot at and maybe cannons.
Yeah, the ship was you can't go being attacked 120 times not having damage.
Yeah.
If you look as you walk out the outside of the ship, you'll see in the skin of the ship there'll be places where it looks like the steel has been replaced. That would be a battle damage. But they were fairly well good at repairing the battle damage. Right now we're in the wardroom. This table is actually where the officers ate, but it was also the operating table.
Wow. You know, as I'm sitting here, I hear this loud noise that you only can hear on a boat. You know, what is that?
Well, that right now is our air conditioning system. That's air circulating through.
Now, back in 1935, they still had the same circulation system?
No, would have been fans.
Would have been fans?
Would have been fans. Air conditioning really didn't start until in the 40s.
Okay.
So it would have been a little bit sweltering here, being in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
It would have been a little bit rough. Now we were a little bit more modern in the 80s. When I was on here, we had air conditioning.
Yeah.
One of the things that, to you, that sounds like noise. To me, that's a very comforting sound, because that tells me that while that's working, and if the ship was on and it had a rumble, I knew we were okay. I knew that things were working. If we were asleep and it was dead quiet, something was wrong.
Really?
Your body would wake up, because the engine should never stop at sea. So if you went to sleep and there was not any type of noise, or you were sleeping and it just got dead quiet, you knew something was wrong. So you would get up and you would go investigate. Something was happening. So having noise on a ship is a good thing.
Okay.
It's a comforting thing.
USS Constellation. There's a grand lady in Baltimore who has taken her rightful place as the Inner Harbor's crown jewel in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay. Launched in 1854 as the last all-sail ship designed and built for the United States Navy, Constellation's century of service embraced the ages of sail, steam, gas, diesel, and nuclear power. Imagine that, launched in 1854 and still afloat. Even more exciting, visitors can come aboard Constellation and explore to their heart's content. On board Constellation, history comes alive as visitors touch, feel, and experience what life was like for sailors during the Civil War. Just bring your imagination. Constellation is the second of 3 U.S. Navy vessels to carry the same venerable name. The first, the Frigate Constellation, was built right here in Baltimore at Harris Creek and launched in 1797. Known as the Yankee Racehorse, the Frigate Constellation was one of the first 6 ships built by the United States Navy. The ship you see here, the sloop of war Constellation, was built at the Gosport Navy Yard in Portsmouth, Virginia, and launched in 1854. A newspaper account from the day of her launch reported that there were 8 pieces of the original Frigate Constellation contained within her timbers. The third Constellation was the aircraft carrier CV-64. Launched in 1960, she served until 2003. President Ronald Reagan called her America's flagship. But it's the sloop of war Constellation that's here in Baltimore today, and the Chesapeake Bay has always been central to her story.
Throughout her century of service, Constellation served in and out of the Chesapeake Bay. It was kind of like coming home every time she returned to the Chesapeake Bay. She was created here at Gosport Navy Yard. And throughout her career, she came to Annapolis. She spent many years there. She sailed to Philadelphia. She sailed up and down the bay several times. And every time that she returned, it was like a homecoming for her.
Constellation's early career is perhaps her proudest and most exciting. From 1855 to 1858, she sailed the Mediterranean to protect American interest and show the flag. From 1859 to 1861, she served as flagship of the U.S. African Squadron, cruising off the western coast of Africa in pursuit of American slave ships.
The most important thing that people learn on this ship that very few had ever heard of was the ship's relationship to the African Squadron. That this country did have at sea, before the Civil War, a fleet of ships designed solely to free slaves who'd been captured and were on their way to the Western Hemisphere.
Constellation captured 3 slave ships, Delicia, Cora, and Triton. Cora alone carried a human cargo of 705 captive Africans. While Constellation was flagship, the U.S. African Squadron captured 14 slave ships and freed almost 4,000 Africans destined for slavery in the Americas. During the Civil War, Constellation served once again in the Mediterranean, where she protected U.S. commerce, took part in the blockade against the Confederate raider Sumter, and showed the flag throughout the Mediterranean world. 1865 saw the end of Constellation's active sea service. From 1871 to 1893, home once again in the Chesapeake Bay, Constellation served as the practice ship for the midshipmen at the United States Naval Academy, where she earned the nickname the Cradle of Admirals. Constellation's cruising grounds stretched from Annapolis northward to Newport, Rhode Island, as the ship provided the future leaders of the United States Navy their summers of sail training at sea. In 1878, Constellation, along with the USS Constitution, sailed to Le Havre, France, carrying American exhibits for display at the Paris exhibition. In 1880, Constellation's guns were removed, her inner compartments reconfigured, and her hold filled with 500 tons of food and clothing destined for the relief of famine in Ireland. She departed from New York on March 30th and arrived in Queenstown, Ireland 3 weeks later. English and Irish dignitaries, including the Duke of Edinburgh himself, celebrated Constellation's mission of mercy. In 1892, Constellation made her last transatlantic voyage, carrying priceless works of art from Italy and France to America for display at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Constellation took her final cruise the next summer. As her crew of midshipmen disembarked, Constellation's sailing career was at an end. Although the age of sail had passed away, Constellation remained active, and from 1894 to 1933, she served as a stationary training ship at the U.S. Naval Training Center in Newport, Rhode Island. And it was there in Newport that Constellation saw her last official naval service as the relief flagship for the U.S. Navy's Atlantic Fleet and Battleship Squadron 5 during the Second World War. Almost 100 years old, USS Constellation was still serving her country. In 1955, Constellation returned home to the Chesapeake Bay, this time for permanent display in Baltimore. Constellation was kept afloat until 1994, when she was closed to the public. A critical restoration completed in 1999 ensured that the USS Constellation would remain open to visitors, and improvements to the ship continue today.
Constellation is constantly changing. If you came on board a year ago, you'll see something new today. If you come on a year from now, you'll see something new then. We're constantly working to improve the ship.
Constellation's restoration has helped keep Chesapeake Bay maritime trades and traditions alive. Today, Constellation is the largest example of Chesapeake Bay shipbuilding in existence. That's enough history for now. Let's see what happens when you come aboard Constellation.
When you come on board, cell phones and everything don't work anymore. This turns into the 1860s, and you are back in time on the Constellation, learning what it was like to be here.
People come on board and they get touched by this walking through history that they're able to do, and they're able to see the hammocks and see the officer's wardroom and sit in the captain's cabin and have this whole immersive experience that you're never going to get at most types of museums. So this is a really wonderful experience for them, and they have no idea what they're missing out on, and then they come on board and they keep coming back.
We fire the cannon, turn the capstan, and ring the bell daily, and we recommend the free self-guided audio tour which comes in 2 flavors, one perfect for children, the other for adults. Plus, there's the ever-popular Powder Monkey Tour for kids and hands-on adult tours like A Ship as a Machine and Black Sailors in Navy Blue. Groups can also come aboard and sling their hammocks in our overnight program or host special events. Our crew knows the USS Constellation is an amazing experience, but don't just take our word for it. Here's what recent visitors had to say.
It's very kid-friendly, very family-oriented, and the kids will love it, and they'll come out asking questions, which I love.
It transports you back. You can almost get the feel that you were actually there, because laying in that hammock, like, oh my goodness.
I think it's really interesting because it shows you exactly how they slept and how they ate and how they went through life.
But it was an excellent tour, and I think it's something they need to maintain for generations to come.
Should be kind of a must for people who are in the area and have an hour or 2 to spend.
It's just amazing to see what people lived in, how hard they worked in order to accomplish what they did.
It brings your learning alive, and that it helps you to understand. Like, rather than looking at pictures, you can actually see what they were in, and you can actually understand it.
I think it makes me appreciate being an American, knowing these people went through these things to put me where I am now.
I'd say come see it.
Yeah, we were a little bit leery because of the age of our children, 4 and 7. But they enjoyed it so much. It really kind of surprised us. We thought it'd be more for us, the parents, but no, they loved it.
They had a good time.
Yeah, they had a great time.
So come aboard USS Constellation. And while you're here in Baltimore, be sure to visit these other attractions of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network. The Baltimore Visitor Center, a good place to start your tour of this historic city and region. The National Aquarium on Pier 3 near the USS Constellation Museum. The Lightship Chesapeake, and 7-Foot Knoll Lighthouse, both part of the Baltimore Maritime Museum. The Frederick Douglass Isaac Myers Maritime Park and Museum, headquarters of the Living Classrooms Foundation. Fells Point, an early American shipbuilding center, and the Fells Point Maritime Museum. And of course, Fort McHenry National Monument, where the people of Baltimore valiantly defended the city from the British during the War of 1812, and Baltimore's own Francis Scott Key wrote our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. So welcome aboard USS Constellation and enjoy your visit to the historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.
All right, back with you as promised. We have Patrick Acquia.
One of the things that's quite interesting, this is a little statistic that I can take a young kid that comes on a Coast Guard cutter. After 2 years on a Coast Guard cutter, just in general knowledge and responsibility, I would put that kid up against any E5 in any other service just for knowledge and responsibility. Really? Because on a Coast Guard cutter, or in the Coast Guard in itself, we're such a small branch with the people that everybody has to know everybody else's job.
Yeah.
On a ship, I had to know how to be a fireman, how to be a dishwasher, how to be a painter. I had to know so many different skills. I had to have at least a basic knowledge of how an engine worked.
Yeah.
I had to know so much more stuff than just my job that it was amazing.
Would you have to know how to drive the ship?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you ever have the opportunity
absolutely. I was trained as a helmsman. Yes. That is one of the first things when you come onto a Coast Guard cutter as a seaman apprentice. From boot camp, you are taught how to, that's who drives the ship. They are at the helm right now, Coast Guard cutters all around the world. And it's quite unique to have that responsibility of driving a Coast Guard cutter. For myself, driving the Taney, that's an honor in life.
Would you mind just telling me, just give me an idea, I mean, what did it feel like? What's the size of this boat again? You said
327 feet long.
327 feet long.
41 feet wide.
41 feet wide. So you're getting behind the helm of a boat that's 341 feet long, right?
327 feet.
327 feet long,
Correct.
41 feet wide, and you have over 120 people in the boat, in the ship, and you're responsible for directing it.
Correct.
What is that like? I mean, that's just got to have a great sense of accomplishment when you reach that point.
It is the ultimate driver's license you can ever have.
How about to turn a big ship like this?
Wow, this ship, I have to say, of all the ships I've ever driven, the helm on this probably had one of the best responses. It was a little slow when she started going, but when she started to move, this ship would move.
Really?
And she could complete a turn very, very well. This ship was designed for rough weather sailing, but when it was nice weather, it was like driving a Rolls Royce. Yeah. It was like riding a Rolls Royce. It could just have a smooth, one of the smoothest rides of any Coast Guard ship I was ever on.
Sure. Well, it must have been scary at that particular moment, though, right?
Afterwards, it was scary. It was a little scary at first because you didn't know what's happened, but then once you knew, then you got scared. Yeah. And then you did your job.
Yeah. All about the responsibility. Now, can you tell the people at home what would they expect if they came over here to the Taney to take a look and tour around? What can they expect on a visit over here?
Well, let's see. As the Taney being the Queen of the Pacific, it basically looks like the crew has left. You'll go through the living spaces. You'll go through the galley areas. You'll go in below the gun mount. You'll go on deck. You can go to the bridge. Basically, I always put it to, if you walk in the center of the mess deck and you close your eyes, you can almost hear the crew members that are still here. We are a very open tour, whereas you can see in the engine room, you can see the mess decks, you can see the galley. You can, if you want to lay down in one of the bunks and see how it felt, you can do that. We're a very open museum in that retrospect compared to a lot. We open up our 5-inch cannon that you can actually look inside of it, which is highly unusual. Just walking around the ship, it gives you so much more with our different exhibits of Pearl Harbor, the different photos of the ship as you walk through here, the way the ship looked at different periods in time. It's a very open, it's a very informative tour, and it's one that if you are a history buff, that should not be missed.
Do you know how many people actually served on this ship?
The grand total, I have no idea. You know, that's a good question.
I'm thinking it's probably a lot. 50 years worth of history, and you had over 120, 130 people at any time.
And if you figured it turned over every 2 years, give or take.
I mean, so that's 25. That was definitely a lot of.
Probably about 30,000 people have actually served on this ship from start to finish. That's not counting during the World War II era when we had an extra 120 people in the crew. So we were probably a little bit under 30,000 people have served. Now, compared to an aircraft carrier, that's a drop in the bucket. This being a Coast Guard, we are a smaller service, and that was that's one of our saving graces.
All right. Well, I tell you what, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming over here and sitting down with me and sitting down with all of us and sharing your experience and your knowledge about the Taney. Really appreciate that.
I really appreciate you guys coming down. Let me to share my information with you. I think I'm glad you gave me the opportunity. This is what the museum is about. This is this is what we want. We want to be able to talk about the history.
Very good.
We're proud of all our ships in the museum.
That's awesome. Anything you want to tell the people in Baltimore?
Listen, we're not forgetting. We're here. We're here every day. Stop by and see us. You won't regret it.
Yeah, definitely. Come down and take a look at the Taney. This is quite an experience. Is that fantastic or what? I tell you what, this has been an incredible afternoon here, touring the Taney, talking with Patrick Acquia, learning so much about the history of this great ship. So I appreciate you staying tuned. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll see you later.